Most relationships don't change suddenly, they change quietly. Not through arguments, not through decisions, not even through clear moments of rupture. Instead, something else begins to form, a space. At first, it feels temporary, a pause, a phase, something that will resolve itself with time. But over time, that space starts to organize. It becomes familiar, predictable, stable. And eventually, it stops feeling like distance and starts functioning like structure. This is the part most people miss. They think distance is a problem, something that appeared unexpectedly, something that needs to be addressed, repaired, or closed. But distance is often not a symptom. It's an adaptation. It's how a relationship reorganizes when direct contact becomes difficult, costly, or unstable. When two people interact repeatedly, patterns begin to form between them, not consciously, not intentionally. Patterns emerge because interaction itself produces structure, tone, timing, response, withdrawal, silence. These aren't just behaviors, they're signals. And over time, those signals create a field, a relational environment that shapes what becomes possible and what quietly disappears. At the beginning of most relationships, this field is fluid. Closeness moves easily. Distance feels brief. Misunderstandings dissolve quickly. But as pressure accumulates, stress, unmet expectations, unspoken disappointments, the system starts looking for stability. And stability doesn't always mean closeness. Sometimes, stability looks like predictability, and predictability often comes from distance. Distance reduces friction. Distance lowers emotional intensity. Distance creates safety without confrontation. So the system adapts, not because either person wants separation, but because the relationship itself is finding a way to continue functioning. This is why distance often appears without any clear event causing it. Nothing dramatic happened. No betrayal, no explosion, just a gradual shift in how attention flows. Conversations shorten. Responses slow. Moments of closeness feel heavier than they used to. And yet, nothing feels wrong enough to address directly. So distance settles in. What's important to notice here is that once distance stabilizes, it begins to replace communication. Not because communication failed, but because it became unnecessary. The distance itself starts carrying information. Who initiates? Who waits? Who withdraws first? Who fills the silence? Over time, these patterns say more than words ever could. And this is where many people become confused. They try to restore closeness without noticing that closeness is no longer what the system is organized around. They reach out more, explain more, push for conversations, ask for clarity, but the system resists. Not because it's broken, but because it's already stable. Distance has become the structure. This is why effort often increases tension instead of connection. The system interprets closeness attempts as disruption, not repair. And so it responds by restoring balance, usually through more distance. What's happening here isn't emotional failure, it's structural coherence. The relationship has found a configuration that minimizes instability. That doesn't mean it's fulfilling. It means it's sustainable. And sustainability can exist without intimacy. This is why distance feels different. Once it becomes structural, it stops feeling temporary. It stops feeling negotiable. It starts feeling inevitable. People often describe this stage as, something is off, or, we don't feel the same anymore. But those descriptions miss what's actually happening. The relationship hasn't disappeared. It has reorganized, and reorganized systems don't respond to intention alone. They respond to conditions. This is where observation matters. Because once distance becomes structure, you can't dissolve it through effort. You can only understand it by noticing what it's doing. What does the distance protect? What does it stabilize? What tension does it absorb? Often, distance exists to prevent something else from surfacing. Unresolved power shifts, unspoken resentment, asymmetries in investment, changes in identity that haven't been acknowledged. Distance holds these elements in suspension. It keeps the system from collapsing by preventing direct contact with instability. This is why silence can feel heavy, but also strangely functional. It's doing work. And until that work is recognized, the structure remains intact. Relational space isn't about fixing this. It's about seeing it. Because systems don't change when they're pressured. They change when their structure is understood. And understanding doesn't require action. It requires attention. So before asking how to close the distance, or whether it should be closed at all, there's a more precise question to consider. Not about feelings, not about blame, not about outcomes, but about structure. In your relationships, where has distance stopped being a phase and started becoming the system itself? Sometimes distance isn't what separates people. It's what keeps the relationship intact.